Welcome to Extra Mile Orientation Training. Today we will talk about creating your spending plan. As you already know, there are several steps involved with creating a spending plan. You have already been preparing to start your spending plan by evaluating your own personal values and what's important to you, setting goals, and keeping track of your expenses the last few weeks. Today we will walk through the steps involved with creating your actual spending plan. Make sure you have pencils and calculators on hand. So rather than creating your spending plan from scratch, it's helpful to work from a standardized form and add or subtract categories to fit your needs. We have provided the Extra Mile budget form. The Extra Mile budget form is available in Word and Excel formats. As we talk today about creating your spending plan, we will show you how to use the Extra Mile budget form. This form allows you to plan your projected income and expenses and also record your actual income and expenses each week. Please feel free to change the categories if needed to best fit your needs. Your coach or the Extra Mile coordinator can help edit the budget form to make it work best for you. First, when creating a spending plan, you need to determine what period of time the plan will cover. A spending plan usually covers a specific period of time, a month, a week, or possibly every 2 weeks if that's how your paychecks come in and what you're comfortable with. Create your plan around a time frame that works for you. We recommend you base your spending plan off of your pay cycles. This establishes your spending plan based on cash flow and makes it easier to anticipate how much income you have for your necessary expenses. So pause the video here for a minute. Coaches and participants, take this opportunity to talk about the time frame for your spending plan. Start the video back up again once you've determined that time frame. So after you've determined the time frame for your spending plan, you will start building your plan by looking at your income. You can make your plan using either gross or net income. If you develop your plan using gross income, then you will need to show taxes, Social Security, and other items taken out of your check as spending categories in your plan. If you use net income for your spending plan, you do not have to include such categories. However, if you have some items taken out of your check voluntarily, remember that these financial decisions impact your financial situation even if they are not reflected in your spending plan. Keep in mind that income can be more than just your paycheck. It can also include financial assistance such as food stamps or WIC vouchers, a tax refund, assistance from relatives, or money that comes some months in the form of a gift. When completing your first Extra Mile budget form, start with your projected income. Your income may vary from month to month or paycheck to paycheck. Base your budget off of the lowest estimated amount. Also keep in mind that if you are paid weekly, 4 months a year you will get 5 paychecks rather than 4. If you are paid every 2 weeks, which is different than twice a month, 2 months you will have 3 paychecks instead of 2. These extra paycheck months are not necessarily the same months year after year. Check a calendar to be sure you know when these months will occur this year, and talk with your coach about the best way to use that extra income. At this point, I'm going to have you pause the video again and complete the Determining Your Income form found in the coach's manual, and also fill in the projected income section of your spending plan form. Start the video back up again once you have completed these 2 things. After you have your projected income completed, you will then put projected figures in the expense categories that reflect your spending and saving categories. On the Extra Mile budget form, take out or white out the categories that do not fit your personal spending and saving patterns. Add categories that are needed. Focus first on the necessary spending and saving categories. Refer to what you learned about your spending and saving from when you tracked them so that you are being realistic in assigning amounts to categories of flexible expenses. So note the difference between fixed expenses that don't change from month to month and flexible expenses where you have more control over the amount spent. Fixed expenses include things like your rent or a car payment. You can lower fixed expenses, but only with some major effort, like finding cheaper housing or selling your car and buying a less expensive one. Sometimes a move like that is necessary to get expenses under control and in keeping with the amount of income you have. But other times you can look to the flexible expense categories to get your spending plan to work. Flexible expenses are those categories where the amount varies each month. Flexible expenses include categories such as food or entertainment, where you can cut costs by more careful planning and shopping. As you set up your spending plan, be sure to plan for savings as well as spending. If you just wait until the end of the month to see how much is left over to direct to savings, very little savings will ever happen. Instead, pay yourself first by planning how much you actually can afford to save and sticking to that. And don't forget periodic expenses in your spending plan. These are expenses that do not occur every month. Sometimes you can anticipate them, such as property taxes or birthdays and holidays. Sometimes you don't know when they will happen or even how much they will be, such as car or home repairs or unexpected medical expenses. But you still need a plan for how to handle them when they do happen. List all of your periodic expenses and the amount you expect to pay over a year's time. Include a reasonable amount for unexpected expenses like car or home repairs. Add all these periodic expenses together and divide by 12. This is the amount you need to direct to a special savings account each month, so the money will be there when you need it. This savings fund is sometimes referred to as a revolving savings account because it serves as a temporary parking for the money until you need it. You may have several savings categories in your spending plan. Each category reflects saving for a specific goal. So pause the video here and add in projected figures for necessary spending and saving categories. Start the video back up once you have talked about necessary spending and saving categories. Now that you've looked at necessary spending and saving categories, add together all the expenses you have thus far planned to spend and save. How much of your income is left to distribute between the non-necessary expenses? Now you're going to plug in amounts in the non-necessary categories, being careful not to plan to spend more than you have in income. Your goal should be to have your planned spending and saving equal to your expected income. So pause the video here and add figures to your non-necessary spending categories. Total all your expenses and calculate the difference between your projected income and your projected expenses. Start the video back up once you have completed this. Now that you've created your spending plan, if expenses are greater than income, then you need to bring out your eraser. Make adjustments until your income and expenses are equal. When you know you have to cut back on the amount allocated to categories, look first at making adjustments to categories that are non-necessities. It is usually not wise to cut out a whole category of spending. Instead, decrease amounts across several categories. Another strategy is to look to non-financial resources available to you to bring expenses and income into balance. Do you have talents, knowledge, or skills that would enable you to do some things yourself that many people pay others to do? If you take the time to be very careful with your bill paying, can you cut out things like overdraft fees or late payment fees? Are there community services, such as food pantries, that you can access to bring down your costs in various areas of your budget? Does this bring spending down enough to get the balance a spending plan requires? If none of these methods work to balance your plan, then you may need to look at methods for increasing your income. Can you work more hours or take on a second job until some of the bills are caught up? Is there someone in the family who can enter the workforce to add to the household's income? Can you sell some items you no longer use to increase the money available to pay your bills? Coaches and participants, if you are struggling with this, talk with the Extra Mile coordinator for ideas to bring the expenses into balance with the income. If your expenses are over your income at this point, pause the video and edit your spending plan to bring the numbers closer to a balance. Start the video back up when you are ready. If you have more income than expenses in your spending plan, double check your spending plan figures against the information you got when you kept track of your expenses. Are your figures really realistic, or did you possibly estimate to the low side in your spending plan? If everything appears realistic, then you could direct more money to your savings goals or to pay down your debt. Participants and coaches, talk about what would be the most appropriate action to take. When you are first building your spending plan, it's easy to overlook some ways you have been spending money. If you are sure all of your spending is covered in your spending plan, then look to some of the flexible spending categories in your plan and see if it makes sense to add money to those categories. So, if your income is over your expenses at this point, pause the video and edit your spending plan to bring the numbers closer to a balance. Start the video back up again when you are ready. Now that you have a draft of your spending plan, you will use this plan to guide your spending throughout the month. You will use this tool each week to update your actual income received and money spent. You will review this each week with your coach. At the end of a spending plan cycle, you will create a new spending plan for your next cycle. Your spending plan will essentially be the same, but you will want to evaluate if any spending categories might change the next month so you can adjust spending in flexible categories. By making your spending plan before the beginning of the month, you have the chance to look at the whole month and shift planned spending to cover unusually high or low expenses before any of the money is spent. For instance, in August, spending on back-to-school clothing and school supplies would be reflected in that month's spending plan. It could be handled one of two ways. The increased spending in August could be balanced by scaling back on what you plan to spend in other categories such as entertainment, eating out, or perhaps even what goes to savings. The second option would be to increase your income by pulling money out of savings to cover these expenses. In this case, you would add the amount you plan to pull from savings to your income in August plan so your income and expenses would balance. Actually, there's a third option, which is a combination of the two, cutting back in some areas of his spending and pulling some money from saving to help cover the extra spending. Ideally, you want to get your spending plans to the point they are consistent and you don't have to fluctuate your expense categories drastically. This will become easier over time after you get comfortable and consistent with budgeting and you begin to develop a revolving savings account. Keep in mind that during your time in Extra Mile, you will refine and change your spending plan to best suit your needs. This is a learning process, and your coach and the Extra Mile coordinator are here to help you be successful.